I'm joined now for a closer look at all this by Mr Coleman Nee, who is a senior economist at the World Trade Organization. Coleman, thanks so much for taking the time to speak to us. Now,
my pleasure.
First of all, right off the back of the war in Ukraine last year, when it first started, there was fear of some truly devastating effects on the continent. But it's rebounded better than expected. What happened?
Thanks. Well, actually, after the war in Ukraine started, there was fear of reduced food supplies worldwide because Ukraine and Russia are big suppliers of grain to many countries, including in Africa. And also, world energy supplies were expected to be reduced. So commodity prices spiked, particularly energy, but also food prices. And there was, for example, one example is Ethiopia that imported 42% of its grain imports from Russia and Ukraine before the war. But trade actually helped to cushion the shock. What happened was Ethiopia was able to import more grain from the United States, from Argentina, and so free trade has allowed countries to adjust to shocks like this. As for energy, Africa did actually pretty well out of the spike in prices. Africa has 70% of the continent's exports are primary products, including 42% fuels like oil and natural gas. And although the continent's export volume, the quantity of exports was only up around 1%, the value of the exports was up 18%. So they had a big boost in export revenue because of that. But of course, not all African countries are energy exporters. So the ones that are net importers may have been squeezed a bit by the increased cost. So anyway, this is much better than some of the worst case scenarios that we anticipated at the start of the conflict. We looked into different scenarios, and in a worst case scenario, we could have had much lower production of and trade in wheat worldwide and other grains. But what happened was actually there was evidence of substitution across suppliers, like we saw in the case of Ethiopia, but also across products. So instead of wheat, world wheat trade was down around 7%, but world rice trade was up. So you would see this kind of substitution as a result of having a free and open multilateral trading system.
Mm-hmm. So a combination of substitutions, higher prices in energy commodities, and sourcing kind of essential imports from different suppliers has created a bit of wiggle room for the continent. But is that likely to last? What is the prospect for Africa going forward?
Well, there's no escaping the fact that the conflict in the Ukraine has reduced the amount of arable land under cultivation and reduced global grain supplies. And so far in 2022, we were able to get through the year reasonably well because of a warmer than expected winter in Europe, but also the ability to find new sources of supply for food. But if there were a crop failure in some other major producer, the situation could again become critical. So we have less wiggle room because of the food production situation. So that's something to be on the lookout for. But also Africa's export revenues might be down this year. So already commodity prices, energy commodities are down 25%. Compared to 2022, and other non-energy commodities are down 6% in value in the first part of the year so far. So that with stagnant volumes, Africa might see a drop in export revenue compared to the previous year, although the previous year was quite high.
Thank you so much for talking us through all that. Coleman Nee there, senior economist from the World Trade Organization.
Thank you.